The fifth Firefly novel, Life Signs, releases in a few weeks, and in anticipation I decided to revisit the first Firefly novel, Big Damn Hero. I love this book. I have from the first moment I read it. And now I'm going to try and do my best to tell you why. First, a quick synopsis. Obviously this will include spoilers. Please jump ahead to 1 minute 45 to avoid major spoilers, but note that the video after this point will still include minor references to the novel. We catch up with Mal about a month after the events of The Message, but before Heart of Gold. Mal and co are on Persephone loading Serenity full of volatile explosives that Badger is shipping to a mining operation on Aberdeen. It's a dangerous job, but Mal's desperate for work. That evening Mal heads into town chasing a lead about another job. Little does he know he's been set up. Mal is kidnapped and taken off-world. Zoe is left in the unenviable position of having to choose between searching for Mal and completing the job before the explosives overheat and spontaneously explode. What's more, the Alliance is closing in, perhaps having gotten wind of River and Simon's whereabouts. Mal discovers that his kidnappers are a gang of browncoat vigilantes, set on meting out retribution against those they believe to have betrayed their cause. Mal is not a little surprised to find these former friends and comrades have marked Mal for trial and execution. While Mal is being held captive, we see a series of flashbacks to Mal as a young man, just before the war breaks out, and we learn about his relationships with his closest friends at the time, one of whom is the very man gunning for Mal's blood. Back in 2518, like Big Damn Heroes, Zoe and Jane arrive in the nick of time to rescue Mal from the braying browncoat mob, and they all live happily ever after. Big Damn Hero was published in 2018. It was written by James Lovegrove, based on an original story concept by Nancy Holder. Back in 2018, first time I read this book, I couldn't stop smiling. This book was like a love letter to the show and a welcome back party to me, the reader. The characters were well realised, the world building was on point, the dramatic, grounded yet comedic tone matched that of the show perfectly. Reading it, I really felt like I was watching a new episode of the original show. Big Damn Hero is both familiar yet original. It includes story beats and themes that are very reminiscent of certain episodes of the show, particularly Safe and The Message, but Lovegrove isn't interested in simply retreading the same ideas. Big Damn Hero includes a lot of character development, particularly of Mal, but of the other characters as well. Lovegrove explores themes that are touched on from the show, but in far greater depth. Big Damn Hero gives Mal a pre-war origin story that is believable and consistent with what we already know about Mal. Lovegrove avoids the trap of giving Mal too grand or important a backstory. Mal isn't supposed to be anyone special. He's just a guy trying to make his way in the verse. He doesn't have a destiny or some incredible pedigree. He's not a chosen one or the heir to the throne. He's just a guy who had a life before the war, and in this novel we finally get to see some of it. Big Damn Hero is very interested in exploring the lasting impact of the Unification War. The show was always interested in exploring the question, after a major conflict, what happens to the survivors on the losing side? The show gives a variety of answers. You got people like Mal and Zoe who were able to fairly successfully forge new lives for themselves after the war. They lost, but they moved on. And by contrast, there's Tracy, who never really manages to get his life together after the war. He's left a broken, desperate man, just trying to find anything he can to keep himself going. Big Damn Hero extends the Tracy idea by showing us a group of browncoats who have never been able to move on, whose bitterness and malice have been festering for years, and eventually turns inward to the point that they've become desperate, paranoid and cruel. These folks can't punish the Alliance who beat them, so they've turned their anger against their own erstwhile comrades. It speaks to a population of downtrodden former soldiers spread throughout the verse, who were totally left behind after the Unification War. It speaks to a government that strained every sinew to unify the verse by means of war, but has little interest in healing the remaining divisions during the peacetime. Aside from this cohort of browncoats, we also see how a planet like Persephone feels about the browncoats years after their hostilities conclude. Lovegrove extends the theme seen in The Train Job, which opens with Mal getting into a bar fight with Lund, the gentleman not burdened by an overabundance of schooling. We see that the Alliance has done a pretty good job at rewriting history and casting the browncoats as the evil aggressors from which the virtuous Alliance saved the verse. The book makes it sadly all too believable, as in this novel, the browncoats are the villains, while the Alliance figures in this story are either benign or actively positive influences. I really like that the book embraced this idea that the Alliance isn't really all bad, and the browncoats aren't all good. I don't know how widespread the opinion is, but I always really liked this moral ambiguity that existed between the two factions. It wasn't so straightforward as to just call the Alliance evil. As the operative says, the Alliance is not some evil empire. Beyond just the story and plot, though, it's the little touches that really make Big Damn Hero shine for me. Lovegrove includes tiny moments that really cement this story as existing very organically in the Firefly universe. From the inclusion of Chinese swear words to little things like a reference to the crowned king of Londinium, to acknowledging Jane's brother suffers from a condition called damp lung. Things like this only appear fleetingly in the show, but they get a mention in this book. It's a level of detail which gives me confidence that the author really knows this universe well. Something which always really tickles me is when novels and comics reference other novels and comics. This interconnectedness adds to the notion of all these tie-ins existing as part of a single unified story. And to me, that's important. So I got a real thrill when Lovegrove nods to events such as Book's involvement with the destruction of the IAV Alexander and the Battle of Sturgis, both events established in the Dark Horse comics. A real triumph for this book can be exemplified in what might be my favourite scene. About halfway through the book, there's a chapter with Simon as the POV. He interacts with Jane, River and Kaylee in succession. And what's remarkable about this chapter is that it's entirely unnecessary to the rest of the plot, but it's a really nice sequence that captures the relationships between characters at this moment in the series beautifully. To me, the inclusion of this scene shows why James Lovegrove was such a superb choice to write Firefly. He understands it. Not just the world and the characters and the trivia, but the audience, the reader. He understands that people like Firefly not for the sci-fi elements or the action scenes, but primarily for the characters. We care deeply about these people. So Lovegrove just taking a momentary pause in the plot to spend a little time with them, checking in with them, seeing how they're doing. This really shows me that this guy knows how to write Firefly because he gets it. He gets what's important. The greatest achievement of Lovegrove's, however, in my opinion, is just how spot on he captures the voices of these characters. To me, character voices are everything. If I can't hear a character saying the dialogue you give them, then it doesn't matter how good your story is or how good your world building is. It's not Firefly. If Mal speaks, he should say Mal things. If Kaylee speaks, she should say Kaylee things. This is just an absolute must, and while other authors often fumble this, Lovegrove knocks it out of the park again and again. It's difficult to describe exactly how, but when I read Lovegrove's books, it comes through to me that Lovegrove is really enjoying himself. It makes such a difference when you've got an author who really loves the universe that he's writing in, and it shows in the text. I don't have a whole lot of bad to say about Big Damn Hero. There's a handful of typos and a few fairly minor continuity errors which, while fun to nitpick, I'm able to easily forgive because of the enormous amount of goodwill the novel otherwise engenders. I've heard some people express frustration with the number of references that Lovegrove makes to previous Firefly episodes, and it's true he does do this, but it wasn't something that overly bothered me. There's a few which feel a bit random, but mostly for me these references contributed to the love letter / welcome back feeling of the book. My biggest criticism is that this story somewhat messes around with the idea that Mal lost his religious faith when the Browncoats lost the Battle of Serenity Valley. This book suggests that it happens for a different reason, and a fair bit earlier than that. Messing around with this idea, which seemed fairly clear-cut in the show, in my view, was a misstep. But, every diamond has its flaw. So, from one enormous Firefly fan, if you haven't read Big Damn Hero yet, I highly advise you to do so. It is a solid 9 out of 10 from me. Lovegrove crafts an excellent Firefly story that feels incredibly familiar while being simultaneously very original. Big Damn Hero feels on just about every level like a lost episode of the show. I hope you enjoyed my take on Big Damn Hero. If you haven't already, I hope that I've given you inspiration to check it out. I have tentative plans to make follow-up videos for The Magnificent Nine, The Ghost Machine and Generations, and certainly I'll be posting my thoughts on Life Signs in March when it releases. Finally, if you have any thoughts on Big Damn Hero, I'd love to hear them. As you may have gathered, I love talking about this book.